You should never fight cancer. Now, before you assume that what I'm saying is if ever you get diagnosed, you should just let yourself die, let me explain that that's not what I mean. What I'm saying is you should not treat cancer as if it's a fight that you have to win. You should treat it as if it's a challenge. I'll get into the details of that very soon, but first I need to explain something. When it comes to a cancer diagnosis, there are four basic categories in which people normally fall in the way they react to it. First category, and to make this more visual so you can kind of have a better understanding, you can kind of picture four different boxes, and in each box is a set of beliefs, and depending on the type of person you are, if you get diagnosed, well, you pick whichever box fits best with who you are, and you adopt the beliefs that are contained within that box. So in the first box, the first group of people would be people who get diagnosed and it's just too much for them. They can't even bear the thought of fighting, of battling, of trying to survive. They just give up and let themselves die. Obviously, that's not an option that I would suggest. But at the end of the day, I know it's really up to each individual to select whichever box is the best fit for them. So that's box number one. Box number two would be someone who gets diagnosed and then as a result of that decides, you know what, I'm a person of faith. I believe either in God or the universe or, whatever that is to them. And they surrender the outcome to that higher power, whatever that is. So they don't give up. They don't just let themselves die, but they don't have the strength to, to fight, to take the decision themselves. So they're like, you know what? I believe, let's say, in God. I'm going to let God decide if I'm destined to die or I'm destined to live. And they let that decision be taken by that higher power, whatever that is for that specific person. That's the second box. Third box would be the kind of person who gets diagnosed and then decides, you know what, this is not going to kill me. I'm going to fight this. I'm going to battle this, and I'm going to do everything in my power to survive. That is definitely better, in my opinion, than number one and number two. And you can still be in that box and still, have faith, believe in God, believe in the universe, or whatever that is. But it's not like you're letting that decision of whether you're going to live or die in the hands of that higher power. Yes, in a way, but you also decide, you know what, I'm going to fight. I'm going to take charge of this and do everything in my power to survive. So that's the third kind of people. And I would say the most common one. Because society, just the way that the medical system works, we constantly get blasted with this notion that you must fight cancer. You must battle it. It's an obstacle, an opponent that you're facing, and you need to defeat it. You need to overcome it. The downside of that, in my opinion, is there's a possibility of losing. Because let's take boxing as an example. It's the perfect example for this. If you're in a boxing match, okay, let's say your opponent, in this case, it's cancer. You do everything you can to improve your odds of success, to improve your odds of winning. So you train hard, you work with the best trainers, you have the best diet, the best workout. You do everything in your power to get ready to increase the odds that you're going to win. But at the end of the day, it still remains a binary outcome. Either you win or you lose. You survive or you die. Definitely better than option one, where you just let yourself die. Option two, where you surrender to a higher power and that higher power decides whether you live or die. But in my opinion, there's another option that is better than that. Because I don't like having the option of losing, the option of death as a possibility. That's why at the beginning of the video I said you should never fight cancer. You should never treat cancer as if it's something you need to fight, to battle, to overcome, to defeat, because by doing that, there's always the option of losing. My preferred approach is the set of beliefs contained within box number 4. And that would be to treat cancer as a challenge, an opportunity for me to learn, to grow as a person. And before I get too deep into that, let me just explain the difference between a fight and a challenge. If we continue with the boxing example, a fight would be exactly what I described. You have a fight against an opponent, you prepare, you do everything you can to maximize your odds, but at the end of the day, once the fight is over, either you won or you lost. If you treat it as a challenge, sure, there can be fights within that journey, within that challenge, but it's not as important if you win or lose. Because if you treat cancer as a whole, as a single battle, as a single fight, it's literally a do or die situation. Whereas if it's a challenge where you're going to grow, you're going to learn, well then okay, it doesn't really matter if you lose a fight. It's like, okay, I lost. Sucks, but I can get back up and keep fighting. So in this case, in the example of boxing, a challenge would be, you know what, I want to become the heavyweight champion of the world. That's my goal. It doesn't matter how many times I fail, it doesn't matter how many fights I lose, as long as I never give up, it's impossible for me to fail that challenge. And that's the beauty of, adopting the beliefs in that 4th box, is because if you treat it as a challenge, okay, you know you're going to fail, but failure, losing a fight, does not mean death. It just means, okay, I tried something, it didn't work, let me use what I learned from that loss, adjust my approach, and try something different, and then maybe I'll win the next fight. If I lose again, well, I get to learn something from that and keep moving forward, gradually getting better and better and better. And the only way you can lose in this situation is to give up, and that's the thing. If you were the type of person to give up, you would have chosen that first box. You would have gotten diagnosed, it would have been too much for you to handle, you would have given up and let yourself die. So by being in box number 4, giving up, allowing yourself to die is not an option. So you eliminated the possibility of failure, because the only way to fail this challenge is to give up. And you can't give up, because if you were that type of person, you wouldn't be in this box. So that's why I say you need to treat cancer as a challenge, not as a fight. Because by treating it as a challenge, you eliminate the risk. I much prefer to believe, okay, cancer is a challenge. It's meant to teach me things. It's meant to make me stronger. It's meant to grow and evolve as a person. And as I grow and evolve and learn new things, I am eventually going to achieve that challenge, which in this case, obviously, is getting cured from cancer. And by having that approach, there isn't the possibility of, oh, well, I can win, I can lose, so there's a possibility of death. By having this approach, you eliminate that as a possibility. And I know that it's not something that many people do. Most people, including my wife, fall in that 3rd box. They believe that cancer is an opponent you have to defeat. They treat it as a fight, as a battle, and that means that you must keep fighting and fighting and fighting and just do everything in your power to win. But at the end of the day, either you win or you lose. So that's why I choose to treat cancer as a challenge, not as a fight, not as a battle, not as an opponent I have to defeat. It's there to teach me something. And by allowing myself to grow, to evolve as a result of that, I eventually become the person who no longer needs cancer in my life, because I no longer need to have that presence to teach me things, to force me to evolve. And when I become that person who doesn't need that anymore, cancer automatically goes away. So it's really like a small distinction, but a very important one that if you get diagnosed with cancer, especially if it's an advanced form of cancer, stage 4, terminal, or something like that, it's a very important distinction. Because I don't like to put myself in situations where failure is an option. Sure, I understand that at the end of the day, you don't necessarily have control over everything. But I much prefer to adopt that belief that failure is not an option. Not that it's not an option because failing means death and I don't want to die. Just not an option as in I refuse to believe that it's even a possibility. And at the end of the day, whether I'm right, whether I'm wrong, won't change the outcome, but at least I get to live in that way, and that maximizes my odds of survival and also maximizes my enjoyment of life. Because if I treat it as a battle, there's an incredible amount of stress that comes with that. So much pressure. There's also always that fear, that possibility of losing, that possibility of death. Whereas if I treat it as a challenge, it's like, all right, I failed. Let me learn from this. Let me get back up. Let me keep fighting. And yes, I'm using the term fight, but it's in a different context. So you can keep going forward, keep evolving, keep learning as a person until you get to that point where you no longer need cancer in your life. So that's really the approach that I've chosen. I thought it was important to share that because, a lot of people, yes, everyone is aware of cancer. A lot of people have a general understanding of how it works, but I just don't like the way that society and that most people, especially the medical system, presents it to us as an opponent that we need to overcome. Like, I don't want to hate cancer. Not to say that I love it. I accept it. It's there to teach me something, to allow me to grow, but I don't want to hate it. Because, life is not enjoyable when you hate stuff. And I also don't think that it's healthy. As much as we dislike admitting it, cancer is a part of us. It's literally a part of our bodies. Why would you want to hate a part of your body? That is not healthy. So that's really the approach I've chosen to take. And it's something I thought was important sharing. So thank you for listening, and I'll talk to you in the future.